right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Hopefully everybody's doing fantastic. Paul Trani here for Adobe. As my title says below, essentially you can contact me via all social media at Paul Trani, as well as Instagram, PTRANI. I'm gonna dive into this. What's up, Mitch? Juan, Ibrahim, what's up? Simon, how is everybody doing? Jessica, let me know if the music is too loud. And yeah, we're gonna dive into this. We're gonna dive into mobile illustration, dealing with Adobe Photoshop Sketch and Adobe Illustrator Draw, if that works for you. I have two chats going, so hopefully you're joining me on behance.net/live. And yeah, so that would be fantastic. And we're gonna get started. So Martin, good to have you here. Jessica, Catherine from Wisconsin. Music is louder than my voice. It's not always a bad thing. Okay, so let's just crank this up a little bit, shall we? Just a little. Okay, folks, let's dive into this. Hi, Madhavan, Bia. All right, let's dive in, and we're going to talk about mobile illustration. I'm going to switch gears. As you can see right now, we have our... Here. Okay, how's this? Is this a little better? Is this a little better? Only music. Can you hear me now? It shows that it's actually going through. Just want to make sure. So let me know, Donna, Mike, and everyone. Sidharth. And if you're joining me on YouTube, good, good, good. All right, so it seems like some people can hear me. Thank you, Ibrahim. We're good to go. That's fantastic. I don't know why that other layout is not quite working. All good. So if you are joining me on YouTube, hop over to behance.net/live, because I got to man two chats and it's really difficult. And quite frankly, we're going to be talking about Illustrator Draw and Photoshop Sketch. So this is going to be more of a tutorial prepping you for this week, because we have some fantastic illustrators this week. So that is the plan, is to again have you join me there. That is the idea. So for this week, starts at 10 a.m. Give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure that this other layout is set up and all that good stuff too. And just loading in that schedule. It's weird. I'm using Wirecast for those that are interested. And essentially, yes. All right, so let's dive into this. Let's not worry too much about some of this stuff. Apologies. But basically, I'm going to be working on an iPad Pro and working with, like I said, Illustrator, Draw, and Photoshop Sketch. So there's two drawing apps And really one is dealing with vectors and the other one is dealing with more of a sort of a raster bitmap look. All right, so let me just switch to this. Hopefully you could still hear my voice, but these are the 4 fantastic artists that I tried to show a second ago. Rocky Rourke, Mark Curley. If you don't know Mark Curley is, we did streams in 2017. I think it was in 2017, had the sort of the highest rated or highest viewed stream was with Mark Curley, because whether you think you know him or not, you actually do. Focus. There we are. Kyle Webster as well. Kyle T. Webster's Brushes with Brooke, and Jax Joxon. You'll get to know her. But I'm going to switch to the other screen real fast, and just so you can kind of preview some of their work is what I'm going to do right now. So just give me 1 second as I switch over. You know, some days you have everything set up and it seems just fine, but let's dive into this. Basically, if you select the Schedule tab, which is, again, you're looking at now playing. Let me switch over real fast. You'll see that it looks like this. So hopefully you could still hear my voice. This is the schedule, and you can kind of check out these different artists. So Rocky Rourke, Mark Curley, Kyle Webster, and then Jax Joxon. So we have a fantastic lineup this week, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time, going clear till 5 p.m. Pacific time. So that's what's happening. They're using the apps I'm just about to show you. And they're going to have giveaways the next 3 days as well. So they'll give you sort of a theme, and then you illustrate toward that theme is the idea. And that's why we have this stream, is to kind of get you up to speed on these apps that they're going to be using. Because they're going to be just creating. They're not really teaching you Illustrator, Draw, and Photoshop Sketch. That's my job. So let's dive into this. Yes, they're both available for Android. So we're going to dive in this. And you should know these people because, again, Mark Curley is fantastic. They're like the nicest people ever, right? So that's what's happening. I'm just going to go ahead and switch over to my iPad, right? So here I am on my iPad Pro. We're going to dive into this. And again, just like this outline shows you, I'm going to show you Illustrator Draw, which allows you to create vector strokes using basic brushes. I'm going to point out the layers panel works similar to any other app. Then what you could do is you could actually sort of load in an image in the background and draw on top of that image. So you can do some tracing, all right? And then there's certain stamps that you can use. So if you want to draw a square, you can do that very easily, or a circle, and that's just a simple example, but there's sort of baked in shapes that you can use, and then you can go ahead and send that to Photoshop or Illustrator. So that's the idea. Then I'll get into Photoshop Sketch. A lot of those same principles carry over, so I'll spend less time on Photoshop Sketch, but you'll see just the high fidelity of the brushes in Photoshop Sketch is pretty fantastic. Those are going to be bitmap brushes, but it's really powerful. And again, it works in a similar fashion. So switching back over to my screen, you can see right over here as I switch to it. In fact, let's just go full screen like this. And then dive into this. Again, I'm using iPad Pro, and I'm going to be using Apple Pencil, and I'm going to launch Adobe Illustrator Draw. Okay, you can see it right here. Yours won't look quite like this. And essentially, you can see a number of projects that I've kind of been working on. Okay, just a lot of messy things. If you want to get inspired, down at the bottom, you can tap on Discover, and you can see all this amazing work that will make you feel maybe inspired, maybe a little jealous, just a whole lot amazed, essentially, as we dive into some of these. You can see these are the type of people that we typically have on the streams. And if I dug deep enough, we would see Mark's work, and we would probably see Rob's work and everyone's work. So, right. Okay, so, again, you can see all these works under Discover, but I'm going to switch back to work. I'm going to start maybe a new project. You can see in the lower, let me switch this over. The lower right, we have that little plus button, and I can select that plus button and pick sort of the layout that I want to go with. All right, you can see everything from you know, the format for your iPad, for instance, which is iPad Pro in this case, digital illustrations, and then you can get into prints. You're dealing with 300 DPI landscape or portrait mode that you can dive into as well. And it gives you the inches below that. I'm just going to go with iPad Pro landscape because that's going to fit my screen the best. As I launch it, I can see, okay, this seems pretty nice. Sometimes you'll get hints essentially for what is what. But right in here, I'm just going to start to dive into some of this. So off to the side, we can see over here are the brushes. Right then, off to the other side, right over here, zoop, layers. And then up at the top, additional settings. Right, so these are the different areas we can dive into. Notice that I've drawn, I can swipe back with just 2 fingers and start to remove every single sort of line that I've done if I want to kind of clean this up, essentially. Because again, I don't really need all of this. I want to dive into these specific brushes. And just so you know, for the brushes, I'm actually starting on this default draw layer. And the background is a, it's kind of a, it's a slight off-white is what it is, so. I'm using the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, Kathy. So that's what I'm working on. Right in here, I can see I've been using this brush right here. If I tap on a brush, right, I can get the different settings. So I can check out the size, and I can increase the size, increase and decrease the opacity, and also adjust the color. As I tap on it, I can sort of pick a new color if I want to. So I'm going to start with black, and we'll start with a thicker size. And I'm just going to draw something. So let's just do... like that. Okay. Kind of did my name. Roughly undo. I can do that last one a little better, right? And as I draw, what I can do with my other hand, okay, Vladimir, is I can sort of just press with 2 fingers and rotate it. So you can adjust this any way you want when it comes to illustration, right? And you could actually also zoom in. Again, just using 2 fingers is all I'm doing. All right. And another thing I can do, I can go up to the settings up here and say, hey, you know what? Let's rotate this, the canvas, say 90 degrees. We can rotate it 90 degrees again. Oh, guess what? I just turned this upside down, and I thought this was fancy, Leanna and Kathy. This is an ambigram, so it reads the same upside down as it does right side up, right? So again, that's just me being clever, okay? But there I can see I've drawn on that draw layer. It says, Paul, I can add a new layer, a new draw layer in this case, right? Because maybe I don't want to mess with the initial lettering there, okay? But maybe I want to put some color in the background where I can hold down, oops, and drag that layer below the current layer, okay? So I can manipulate these layers accordingly because what I want underneath that is something a little different, maybe with a different brush. And all I'm doing is sort of exploring different brushes with you. So again, any one of these brushes I can select, I can adjust the color, I can adjust the size, exactly as I'd expect, okay? Watch as I pick a different color, by the way. I'm gonna pick let's go with pink, sure, why not? Selecting a pink, right? I'm underneath that layer, obviously, we're gonna see what happens. I can start to outline that like so. Again, and you can start to see what this brush looks like, but essentially I've drawn with a different color, okay? And an entirely different brush. Any questions? So that's the idea. I've used 2 different colors, by the way, and I can have as much fun with this as I want. I can pick sort of this felt tip marker brush, which happens to be, green. I'm going to change that to a teal because we all know that teal and pink is kind of a hot color combo these days. Let's add a new layer, a new draw layer in this case, and put it underneath. Just by pressing and holding, I can put that down. So this is the 3rd layer, the lowest layer, and again, just kind of draw, sure, on the end. Ooh, let's undo that. Let's change the size. Zoop. I'm just adding sort of this blue accent kind of around parts of this just for fun. But I'm doing this with the felt tip, showing you the different layers. They're all color coded. Again, I'm not here to impress you with my art skills. I'm here to teach you Illustrator Draw. And for those of you just joining me, this is Illustrator Draw. Eduardo, good to have you. Ash, how are you doing today? So yeah, the Illustrator won't have that white background if you don't want it to. I'll show you those exporting options and how that looks in a second. Okay, but I'll show you how this looks in Illustrator, by the way. So again, I'm kind of doing this and I'm like, oh, Paul, you're horrible there. Look, you did a horrible job. You need to erase that. Sure enough, there is the eraser. That's that very last option down there at the bottom. Selecting that eraser. Eraser works just like any other tool. It's going to give you sort of the different sizes. So I can make that size a little larger and kind of round that out like that. Okay, let's kind of clean that up. Okay. Okay, so not bad. I might decide that I should have used a different brush. Instead of that felt tip, I should have used this brush right here. And I'm like, oh, great. I want to use this same brush with the same opacity, but what's the color? Do I have to go in and try to pick that same teal color? Well, what we could do is we can change this to not only themes, but I can go into history. So this is what I like, by the way, Catherine and Vladimir. Like, check this out. Like, I can go into the history of my colors that I've picked. Right, so from there, selecting history, and there's that teal color that I was working with, and then I can finish with this brush and kind of round that out. Again, keeping this simple as I start to draw and work on this. Again, I'm just having fun, essentially. Showing you the different colors in the layers and all that good stuff. So yeah, Vladimir, you can use the eraser tool. Eraser tool will actually work just... Oh, you want it to use the eraser to use with your finger alone. Oh, I don't think that's an option, quite frankly. But that would be fantastic, right? If it recognized your finger... if it recognized your finger over iPad pencil, that'd be fantastic, right? And it's not like a Wacom either. So like the pencil, like when you turn it upside, when you turn a Wacom pencil or pen, flip it over, you can erase with it. Doesn't quite work that way. But let's gotta dive into some of the other color options, by the way, because I think they are really fancy, and that's when it might start to look kind of ugly. But I'm going to show you a couple things. Check this out. This is really cool, by the way. Love this. I love this stuff. All right, so let's go back into color, right? I've shown you the history, by the way. I can go back to color wheel. I can turn on this color wheel upper right and pick out, say, a triad or, say, complementary colors, right? Essentially what I did earlier is I've kind of picked out some almost complementary colors. But this is your color theory class within one color panel, okay? So you can go in here and say, hey, you know what, maybe I do want these colors, and let's brighten it up, and I can see the opposing color of this green is going to be that pink, right? So I can select that, or actually go over here and use that electric green if I want to, because I'm deciding, you know what, I want complementary colors instead of using that blue, okay? So that's what I'm doing. I'm going with that green, that's electric green. I'm going to zoom in here. Now check this out, right? I'm like, oh, I want to draw everywhere on this layer where the blue is. So you can draw inside of elements. Let me press right here. Oh, help me. Okay. Okay, so I lied. That is in Photoshop Sketch. Photoshop Sketch allows you to actually paint inside of shapes. So you will find that option. But I will show you that in here you have the options for different blend modes. Okay, so if I zoom out again, that's what I'm going to do, just kind of zoom out. And I'm going to select this pink layer, and I'm going to change the blend mode to, say, multiply. And you can see what it did when I change it to multiply. Anywhere where those colors overlap, they're obviously multiplying. Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of digging the Miami Vice vibe, for instance. Thanks, Juan. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm drawing in here. You know, again, this is okay. I can turn this upside down and say, oh, you're so fancy. That kind of still says Paul. It's okay. I can kind of clean it up some. I can take some of these layers and maybe turn them off as well. Kind of turn that eyeball off. Turn that eyeball off. Let's add a new layer. Okay, so I've gone over all the brushes, right? We know all the different brush settings. I'm going to create a new draw layer, but I'm going to go beyond brushes and I want to get into shapes, right? So check this out. Still using this green brush, I'm going to go up here to the upper right. We have in-app shapes. Everything from basic lines and shapes to French curves to these fun comics, and I can scroll through and see even some fun people, which looks very much like clip art. All right, but I can go ahead and add this burst, for instance. Selecting this burst under comics, that's what it gives me, this nice little burst, okay? I'm thinking, okay, this would be really cool to put behind my text or my lettering, okay? How do I add that brush stroke to that shape? You just double tap and then it stamps it. Okay, we'll go out a little bit further. We'll change the color using my history, selecting that pink, double tapping, and we have another burst. You get the idea on down the line as I bring it a little smaller, just like that. Yes, it almost says POW more than Paul at this point. Paul, can you have to be in the correct layer and select hold and on a block of color? I'm not sure what you mean. You want to be in a correct layer and select and hold the pointer on a block of color. Not sure what you mean there. Oh, by the way, I'm double tapping on these shapes. Maybe I don't want to use the whole shape. Maybe I just want to use part of it. Maybe I just want to use sort of a burst. Let's go over here. Like, using my brush, I want to just draw, and watch when I draw. Wait for it. Help me. Let me add a new layer just because I have so much going on. Turning that off. This new layer, selecting, say for instance, a square. Dragging out with this square. I am able to paint, and watch, I could do this perfect sort of corner right there by painting with that stamp selected. Okay, so I can do those corners like that and make it nice and tight. Hit that X button, and now I have that framed in. Hey, Kai, where is paint inside, by the way? Am I losing my mind, by the way? Because it should be right in here. Paint inside. Where is paint inside? Am I losing my mind? I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's in Photoshop Sketch, but tell me, Kai, because I guess I will be learning something today as well. So other options should be pretty straightforward. Again, we've started to create this design, again, keeping it simple for you. I encourage you to dive into all these different lines and shapes if you're just doing straight lines, some nice French curves if you just want to curve something out, and different shapes as you notice right in here. So, oh, let's undo that. Swipe. Let's go to color wheel. I can save colors. And yeah, that's basically how I'm manipulating this. Right down here at the bottom, as I dive into more specifics around not only the size, the opacity, the color, but also the different pressure dynamics, velocity dynamics of that specific brush. So that's at the very bottom. And hey, Felicia, how you doing? Shout out to Felicia, who just got an iPad Pro as of last week, so I'm glad you're here. So yeah, so happy to have you here. By the way, you don't need an iPad Pro or even an iPad, or really all you need is an Android or iOS device, because this will work on your phone as well. So no problem there. Use whatever device you have. It's just obviously you're gonna have more screen real estate if you're working on an iPad or a larger device. All right, so see all that? That looks good. One more thing I'm gonna show you real fast. Switching gears right up here, and in fact, selecting this gear. I've gone over, let's go right here. Selecting this open in. I don't want to open in anything just yet, but I'm going to click on this time lapse. So back in the day, you used to be able to scrub with 3 fingers to go through, but I can select time lapse, and this is a video of everything that I've done. So we can kind of click from the beginning, and we can see everything I've done the past 25 minutes. All right, did you see that? Kind of pointed out the different tools, started with different brushes, worked on the layers, made a design. Again, keeping this simple for you, okay? From here, what I can do is I can go ahead and send this to Creative Cloud, all sorts of places, basically. Of course, we could save it as an image. That'd be silly if we couldn't. This is the cool thing. We can open it up in Illustrator CC or Photoshop CC, right? I'm dealing with Adobe Illustrator Draw, so I can select to send to Illustrator CC, so that's what I'm doing right now. You have to make sure you're logged in. You're going to use the same login, obviously, on your iPad as you do on your desktop, but then it will actually open up on your desktop. So you could be working at a coffee shop on your iPad Pro, and by the time you get home to your laptop or desktop, this illustration will actually be opened on your desktop. And what's happening right now is it's actually opening up on my other screen. It's opening up Illustrator CC. So here it is. Okay, there we go. Here it is. I just said open in Illustrator. It's going to open this up in Illustrator, and we can take a look at it. All right, so here it is. Sure enough, in Illustrator, somebody mentions, does the background come through? The background does. It's a slight sort of off-white, like a page color, right? So I could turn that off. But not only that, I can come in here and I have access to all of these different sort of Bezier points as I see all these different vector shapes that I could start to adjust, because I'm noticing this is kind of large. Maybe I'm going to shrink that down, or really lock in this layer and manipulate accordingly. You get the idea. It's all vector. Isn't this great? Are you not amazed? If you select the black text layer and press and hold a black letter to fill with an... Ooh, that's a good... Thank you, Simon. Awesome. Simon, what's up? Yes, so you could always do what he says. If you select a text layer, for instance, or any enclosed shape, you can press and hold, and it will fill it with that new color. Look at you. Look at you with your pro tips. I like it. Thank you for bringing that up. But you can clearly see that this is a vector, and I can play with this all I want. And also, all those other layers, even though they were turned off, they're actually still there, okay? Yeah, so Catherine, all the layers came over. We could see them right over here. Zoop. There they are. Zooming in. Fantastic. Fantastic, right? I can even open up. Wait for it. Wait for it. Again, I'm just running this in QuickTime Player. Here this is on my iPad. And then here it is again, just on my desktop. You get the idea. It's supposed to say Paul, Felicia, by the way. So it's an ambigram. So if you flip it upside down, it's supposed to say Paul both ways. I do a much better job, and did again, all I was doing here was my concepting, and I can show you other versions, but I was just doing my concepting for this idea for an ambigram. And, you know, I can kind of show you where this ended up. So you can sort of prototype, do whatever you want. And again, here, just to prove that I'm not a total hack, here's the final that I ended up with, doing something more like this. And if you click play, you can see. So hopefully that makes sense. All starting in Illustrator Draw, kind of refining, because once I ended up in Illustrator, it just started to be like totally different. But just to give you an idea of how you can use it for concepting. Cool. Follow me on the Instagrams. Okay. Oh, it could say envy. Oh, wow. That's weird. You are correct. Okay, so let's move on. Let's dive into, if you don't have any more questions. Dana, awesome. Thank you. How's everybody doing today? Having a wonderful Monday? I have some nice fancy coffee. I'm really getting into the Chemex coffee makers. Sorry, you didn't need to hear that. Yes, it's an ambigram. Thank you so much. So, let me just kind of switch over and make sure we covered everything, right? So we went over basic brushes using layers, just like you would in Illustrator. Oh, drawing on images. That's something I actually did not show you how to do, but it's like really straightforward. In fact, as I switch back, give me 1 second. And I close this file, right? I can close that. There's that fancy file. Here happens to be like another project. And I was just drawing on this particular face. Okay, we can see right back here, this is an image layer. So I select that image layer and I can bring up the opacity. And I was just drawing on top of it just to make sure it was like an anatomy lesson, right? So I just kind of go through and just adjust the transparency and then draw on top. Super easy, because basically when you add a layer, you select image layer, and then you say use one from any one of those locations. So grab one from your iPad, you get the idea. All right, so that covers that. We're 30 minutes in, we're doing well, on time. Felicia, I could try. It's hard. Ambigrams are tough, essentially. So, and thank you so much, Dana and Felicia. You were too kind. So that's Illustrator Draw. By the way, Rocky Rourke loves Illustrator Draw. You also have Robzilla, who also loves Illustrator Draw. Right? Photoshop Sketch. So switching back to my screen. Right? So again, Adobe Photoshop Sketch. And let's just close that. Close that. I'm getting into a number of apps, quite frankly, right now. But we're dealing with just the drawing apps, which happen to be right up here. Okay, so you see that? We went into Adobe Draw, as it might be called, but technically it's Illustrator Draw, so you know that it's vector, and this is technically Adobe Photoshop Sketch. We can talk about... I'm sorry I don't know why the sound cut out for you. I apologize. But let's dive into Adobe Sketch now. So again, launching Adobe Photoshop Sketch. You can see some of my hacky work here, right? But if you want to get inspired, just like I said below, as I select Discover, this gives you a good impression of what you can do in Photoshop Sketch, okay? So you can see that you have a lot of these illustrations are much more, it looks like it's done with pencil, right? And this simulates that work. I mean, look at how fantastic this is. I'm not saying all of these are done with Photoshop Sketch, but at least the first one, he tagged it with Photoshop Sketch, from what I understand. So, but again, these are the ideas that you can do with Photoshop Sketch, and it's really cool. So let's dive into work, right? Let's go ahead and create a new project, and you can see the different sizes you can do. So, again, I'm just going to go with iPad Pro. All right. Okay, so here I have again. It's exactly what you'd expect. We can see again off to the side. Again, outlining this. These are our sort of brushes, layers, and then your different settings. Right? But look at this line stroke that I just made. Look at this. This looks like, again, a real pencil, which is fantastic. So let's just get out of that. Swiping back with 2 fingers is an easy way to remove, okay? Also notice here at the upper right, I can just hit that undo button and that will remove kind of what I just did, but essentially follows the same methodology. And let me just check chat. And if you're joining me on YouTube, hop over to behance.net/live because that's kind of the chat that I'm monitoring. But I'm really talking about, this is really a tutorial around Photoshop Sketch. This, again, might be the same situation where you can have a sketch layer or you can have an image layer. From here, I can go to my files, for instance, and locate, you know, from my files or even my libraries, a number of assets that I can pull from. So really, if it's in Creative Cloud, I can get to it and start working with it. So right in here, selecting people. At this point, let's take this image that I can draw over. So I'm starting this project a little bit different in that I'm actually just going to lay down an image in the background. Oh, Dana, you made a couple cool things with Sketch the day you got the stylus. Oh, cool. Would love to see. So put those skills to work this week. We're going to have contests as well. So again, we'll just increase the size of this. Say put it right there. I can flip it. I can fit to view. I'll just click done. And then from there, I can see, okay, here I can adjust the opacity. So in this case, I'll just drop it down about 50%. And then I'm going to draw on top of it with this sketch layer. Okay, from there I can use the pencil. And again, just kind of say tracing over this, for instance. And watch what happens if you are using the Apple Pencil. You're going to have a lot of control. So I'm just kind of drawing, these are hard lines. If I actually tilt it a little bit to the side so it's more horizontal with the iPad, I get these shading. So I can drop in shading right there. It gives me that wide brush, for instance, right under here under the nose. This is typically how I do things, is kind of lay things in blocks of hue, for instance, or, you know, intensity of color, kind of dropping that down there. And again, getting that basic sort of shading for this person, for instance, again. Undo, swipe, you get the idea. Zoop. This is the advantage, right? So again, just holding this more vertically with the iPad Pro and using an Apple Pencil gives me that. If I hold it more perpendicular, I can sort of draw the eyelash right here, for instance. I can get those fine lines. Drawing the eyebrow, getting the nose, outlining the lips slightly, getting all of these little fine details you'd come in and do a little later. So again, holding it more horizontally, selecting the eraser, again, adjusting the size. Something like that. All right. Okay, Thomas, you're still on an older iPad as well as using the Wacom Bamboo Sketch. Cool. The one thing that the Wacoms have is they allow you to sort of like flip it over and use the other end as an eraser, which is kind of cool. Pencil doesn't really let you do that. But again, just kind of outlining this and showing you really the line quality that essentially you get in this case. I'm not saying this is pretty. I'm just saying I just started working on it. Let's dive into the settings. Same thing for Photoshop Sketch as Illustrator Draw. If I select the brush or the pencil in this case that I'm working on, I get the different settings. So I can increase the size of it, the flow, you see the color as well, and then I can get into the specifics of the pressure dynamics. Now, when it comes to testing out these pressure dynamics, I can actually draw right up here in this little space and get an idea for the flow. So if I want the size to maybe increase a lot with the velocity, I could crank that up. Or let's increase the flow. Let's see how this works. Let's make the size larger. Again, I'll just hit reset. I'd say these settings are pretty good. I can click back out of that and dive into some of these other tools as I take a look. Ooh. Thomas, you have everything. Yeah, so I will say, Thomas, as you get into this, you know, say if you're using Apple Pencil, Felicia, for instance, I encourage you to get a screen protector, one that has a matte finish, because it's going to alleviate any reflection, but it's going to give it just like a little bit of drag, because you want a little bit of drag just to make sure that this works like a pencil works. So I want a little bit of drag on this as I start to draw around this particular shape. So again, that's what I encourage you to do, because otherwise this is way too slick. All right, definitely need more time with this. We have the felt brush, by the way. In this case, I'll just create a new layer, a new sketch layer. Check this out. You ready for this? You ready for this, Thomas and Felicia and everyone? I absolutely love this. And maybe this isn't the best place to work on this, but I want to show you the different brushes. So we have, of course, pencil. We have our felt tip. We have more of our paintbrush. We have this thick one, right? So what about her hair? Maybe I want to get crazy with her hair. So let's create a new layer, new sketch layer. And all I'm doing is just going to show you these different brushes. This brush is going to be, sure, we'll just keep it orange. But look at how this brush works. As I start to paint, it actually looks like an actual brush stroke. So look at that. Are you not impressed? I love it. Ooh, Mitch, there's actually a screen protector called Paper-like. I had no idea. I forgot which one I got, but essentially I got one of whichever one got the highest reviews on Amazon. So again, look at this. Are you not impressed? And by the way, let's check the velocity dynamics. Let's adjust the velocity dynamics. The size is typically what I'll do is try to press, as I press harder, I want the size to increase. So you get more of the thin to thick, right? So this is absolutely gorgeous. And again, I was just playing around with her hair, right? So yes, her hair is kind of very wispy and painterly. Sure, why not? Right? Again, it has issues. Let me show you one more option, and let me just switch over. Let me just turn off some of these other layers because they're getting distracting, and show you right down here the very last one, which is the watercolor brush. Currently just set to green. That is fine. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start laying this down. Right? And you'll start to see that the watercolor is actually expanding as if it's wet. Okay, so as I do that, let me zoom out. Let's add a different color, showing you that this actually works like actual watercolor, right? So off to the side, I'm going to blend these two together. Watch what happens as I zoom in. We could see them move. Are you seeing them move, Felicia? Hopefully you can see them move. So again, really cool that you could do that. Obviously, just lay down a couple colors to make something kind of unique. And at this point, say for instance, if I don't want that sort of look yes, Juan, the expanding thing is awesome. If I don't want that expanding thing, if you will, right down here, let me try to zoom in on that using my desktop. That little fan that's kind of behind my head, that will dry it. It says, hey, you know what? I'll go ahead and dry it for you if you don't want it to blend. So hitting the dry, and then I'll try a different color. That's going to be maybe a blue. And you can see that it works. It'll expand, but it doesn't blend into the background, okay? From there, I can start to even paint. Again, I could do a paint within, right? So if I happen to have a sketch layer and I did a heart, which I'm going to do right now with a nice pink. There's my fun heart. And check this out. Selecting this, and this is what I mentioned earlier. I'm talking about the differences between these two, right? The fidelity of these brushes are fantastic. I need to talk about two major things. Here we go. Paint inside is that bottom option. So hopefully you can see that as well as I go over here. Paint inside. Zoop. At this point, I'll turn that on, and you'll see what it can do. Turning that on, I'll just use you know, you get the ideas. Essentially, I'm just painting inside of that shape that I've just drawn. Excuse my mess right now. All right, so we can see I'm calling it abstract art. Why not? So again, paint inside is fantastic. Let's try a new sketch layer and turn off some of these others. And I'm going to point out one more thing, because you would think, oh, what, you only have, what, 5 outstanding brushes? Is that it? You would be wrong, my friend. So I'm going to click. I'm actually going to hold down on this brush. Oh, look what just happened. Out pops all of these sketch brushes that I have available to me, right? So look, we have the Leaky Fountain Pen, the Inky Grind by Kyle T. Webster, none other than the man that is now an Adobe employee but will be with us on Adobe Live all this week. Starting tomorrow, 9 a.m. is when we start. Kyle goes on, I think, at 11. I could be wrong. I'll check the schedule in a second. Thank you, Martin. You're my new best friend. So, but look at all these brushes. Like, I have access to all of these brushes, which are actually now available in Adobe Photoshop Sketch. So just change to red, let's crank up that color. And again, oh, make a layer visible is one thing you do have to do. Let's create a new layer. This is, what did I call it? Or what did Kyle call it? The Inky Grind brush, right? So again, Inky Grind, I can paint inside of that, but just pointing out, if you just hold down, you'll have access to all of these. I will, again, smudge brushes in there. We can see how that looks. Fantastic. Look at all of these. I don't have time to go over all of these, but you get the idea as I select a different color. Sort of paint on top of it, right? Pretty cool stuff happening. That's all available to you. If I hold that down, by the way, we're going to click Add. You can import from CC Assets. You can create brushes in Adobe Capture, which we don't have time to get into, but really you want to import from CC Assets. What I'm actually going to post to the chat. Oh yeah, I could double tap on a layer to show or hide visibility. Awesome. Hey, I didn't know that, Chad. You are the man. I appreciate that. So nonetheless, you can add these from CC Assets. I will actually post a link because I think you need to know about where to get Kyle T. Webster's brushes. But I need to show you kind of how to load these in because that's going to be hugely helpful this week. And doing that now. Again, if you're not joining me on behance.net/live, you should, because that's where I'm posting the link. Wait for it. I have about give me 1 second. It's basically right here. Let me bring this over to my other screen. Kyle T. Webster's Photoshop brushes now available in Photoshop Sketch. So that's the link I'm going to post. If you give me 1 second, I'll try to post it there, but this is the link. Or if somebody else can post it, that would be hugely helpful for me. It's on Adobe's blog, so if somebody can post that for me, that'd be fantastic. Again, there we go. Took a second. Pasting it in now. Last thing I'm going to do with this beautiful drawing that I did, I want to go ahead and send to my desktop, not necessarily to Illustrator. I want to send this to Photoshop. So just kind of minimizing that. There's my iPad. Here is Photoshop. And what I'm going to do at this point, again, kind of showing both at the same time, kind of behind my head, I'm going to go to right over here, click. Let's go ahead and send to Adobe Desktop Apps. So right over here, you can see that I'm actually going to send it to Photoshop CC, selecting that, and it will send to my desktop. Kyle, you know, and Kyle's like, his brushes are awesome. And it's nice to know that he's such a humble, like, down-to-earth, like, fantastic guy. So I really appreciate him and his artwork and everything he does for the community. And I'm glad we've tried to get him as an employee, because we wanted to get him as an employee so we could give away these brushes for free as part of Photoshop, which we've done. And again, I'll have to find that link for you. I just saw the message that says sent, so we should see it in Photoshop in a second. But again, the idea is you would be drawing somewhere, again, at a coffee shop or with a client, and then when you get back to your desktop, that's when that artwork would pop up right here. And like somebody just mentioned, I get to use these for the textures alone is really huge when it comes to you know, sort of drawing on an iPad or really any device using Photoshop Sketch. All right, kind of winding down, seeing if you have any questions around any of this. Again, this is your crash course. Use Illustrator Draw for vector. Use Photoshop Sketch for more raster bitmap, stuff like you see here. And, can't spell. To make whatever you want to make. The thing is again, it syncs to your desktop, and you can go ahead and have fun taking that to the next level, like you can see here. So, all right, kind of slowly wrapping up now. We'll go ahead and change this to my favorite font, Lust. Lust script display. Come on, where are you at? There you are. Boom. So again, thank you very much for watching. Just one of those days. Come on. It's tricky when you're running streaming software that's pulling from your iPad and displaying on your other desktop and all that good stuff, but hopefully you get the idea. I'm going to let you go. Again, I'm going to click over to the schedule and kind of wrap up with the schedule. You get the idea. There's the fun font. And I encourage you to just have fun creating, because that's what we want you to do. All right, everyone. Well, have a wonderful day. Again, Rocky Rourke, Kyle T. Webster. Zip up my other screen. There we go. As well. That's probably the highest rated or most viewed stream of last year. So if you don't know